Maybe I can use that as an excuse. They would forgive me, right? Having made up his mind, Aints nodded benevolently at Demiurge, who looked like he was hoping for praise. Oh, you remembered, of course, Lord Aints. I could never forget a single word you said. I see, so that conversation from back then, indeed, my lord. It was that conversation, right? Indeed, my lord. So it was that time. Well, I am glad, Demiurge, thank you. But you know, world domination is a difficult thing. It certainly is. So how do you think we should go about it? Pretty impressive how my voice isn't shaking, if I do say so myself. I suggest we set world domination as our guiding principle going forward. It is my belief that Nazarick should act openly. With the ones who mind-controlled Sholtia currently operating in secret, it could be problematic for us to remain lurking in the shadows. I see, really, lurking in the shadows seemed safer. Aints had no clue how Demiurge had arrived at his conclusion. I agree, Lord Aints. If we get the organization out in the open, then we can deal with issues openly as well. We wouldn't be limited to dispatching handfuls of agents anymore. We wouldn't need to creep around for investigations either. Hearing Albedo's explanation, Aints finally understood. Oh, I see. It was tempting to go from these painstaking operations to simply doing whatever they wanted. So we rule the kingdom from behind the scenes, forcing them to acknowledge Nazarick. But I won't stand for this place. We rule to be counted as part of the domain of some country. Demiurge shook his head in response to Albedo's concern. Of course you wouldn't, Albedo. Neither would I. Besides, I have analyzed the data we collected. There is practically nothing appealing about the kingdom, with the exception of one person. It is the same for the other countries. I think serving another state would be a foolish plan. Why is that? Serving another state would hold us back in some ways. If the ones who mind-controlled Sholtia hailed from some organization while we had been serving some state, we might not have been able to act in time. Therefore, Lord Aints Demiurge fixed his eyes on Aints and solemnly made his suggestion. I propose we establish a country called the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Chapter 1, An Invitation to Death. Imperial capital Owenthal was to the west, in the Baharuth Empire's territory. At its center stood the Imperial Castle, where Jerkniv Rune Farlord Elnix, also known as the Fresh Blood Emperor, resided. Important facilities of every sort, the graduate school, the Empire's Magic Academy, government agencies radiated out from it. The city was truly the heart of the Empire. Its population was smaller than the Rey Esti's kingdom's capital, but the scale was much grander. Additionally, due to major reforms over the past several years, the city was in the middle of the greatest growth period in its history. The capital was constantly importing new things, creating an influx of materials and talent, while the old and stagnant parts were demolished. The hope for the future that the residents carried was evident in their cheerful and bright expressions. The city practically clamored with dizzying excitement as Aints walked through it with Narbarrel. Usually, people who had just arrived from the countryside would move slowly and take in their surroundings as they strolled. Many of them were struck by the many differences between the kingdom and the Empire, but Aints didn't have that kind of time. His mental state was clearly reflected in his hurried gait. The emotion controlling him was displeasure. Demiurge's plan was the reason for Aints' trip to the imperial capital, and every time it came to mind, the furrows in his brow grew deeper, though his face was only a magical illusion. Patience should have been unnecessary for the absolute ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, Aints Ul Gaun. There shouldn't have been any need for him to suppress his irritation. He was an overlord whose word was absolute. He could take something white and call it black, and it would be so. There shouldn't have been a single thing that didn't go his way. So why was he in this situation? Even though he wanted to veto Demiurge's proposal, there was a reason he hadn't been able to. Demiurge's plan was extremely straightforward and would yield immediate results in terms of putting the power of Nazarick on display. Aints didn't like it, despite that, because he felt it would bring dishonor on the creations of his friends. Rejecting a wonderful plan for personal reasons would be deplorable. He certainly didn't want anyone to think he lacked the broad-mindedness to consider it. Besides, he hadn't been able to come up with a counter-proposal. Objecting without a counter-proposal is just one form of whining. This is what Aints thought to himself. It was member of adult society Aints, not supreme ruler Aints, who shouted this in his head. Aints repeated what he'd already told himself many times. Calm down. You need to chill. If you need to choose between logic and emotions, the correct choice for a boss is obviously logic. Men who act based on emotions achieve amazing results if they're lucky, but most of the time they come up with nothing worth mentioning. Besides, the die is cast. I guess Aints didn't have any lungs, but he took a deep breath and exhaled. The citizens giving dubious looks to the warrior, who suddenly started breathing heavily in the street, didn't bother him. His commanding appearance already attracted attention. Especially since he'd been celebrated as a hero, it was actually rarer for no one to be looking at all. For that reason, beyond special circumstances like when he had to put on an act or moments spent riding Hamusuk, the gazes of ordinary people didn't faze him one bit. After a few more deep breaths, his creeping discomfort had abated somewhat. He finally had the energy to pay some attention to Narbarul behind him. Sorry. Was I walking too fast? Aints was wearing armor. There was still a big difference between his manly gait and Narbarul's feminine stride. She wore a robe. Considering her strength, it probably wasn't an issue. But as a man, he still felt the need to apologize for pushing ahead without considering her. No, not at all. Okay, did she only answer that way because she's my servant, or is it really not bothering her? Unsure, Aints shortened his stride and tried to come up with a topic for conversation. Feeling a bit embarrassed about how on edge he'd been up until now, he racked his brains for something to talk about. He couldn't come up with anything suitable. Small talk among salesmen generally consisted of benign topics like the weather. Sports wasn't bad, either, but that required knowing the other person's favorite team ahead of time. Aints was trying to think of something like that to bring up as he mentally cursed under his breath. Why should I have to tiptoe around Narbarul? She's my subordinate. This is a perfect chance to practice conversing with underlings while role-playing as a ruler. But I wonder what would be good for a ruler, or rather, I wonder what sorts of things absolute beings chat about. Aints recalled the everyday conversations he used to have with his boss at the office. He wondered if that would go over well or not. He was the elite ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, not a corporate executive. His position was more comparable to that of a company president, though it wasn't quite the same. He wondered what kind of conversations the ruler of the kingdom has with Gaze of Stronov. He wished he could use that as a point of reference. It was a bit late to be mulling over this. Walking in silence any longer would be awkward. Still unsure if it was a good topic, Aints desperately broached one. Hey Nabe, what do you think of my voice? Aints poked at his vocal cords, or more accurately, the place where they would have been. He touched his gauntlets to the spot on his neck. He normally would have felt only metal, but there was something squishy inside. There was also an out-of-place dampness inside his throat. To be quite honest, I don't much care for it. Not that it's an odd voice, of course. I merely prefer Lord Mr. Mommon's normal one. I understand the circumstances, but I do sometimes wish you would go back to your regular voice. I think it's pretty nice and elegant. Neuronist chose it from among the voices of 50 people, so it's only natural that it would have a certain charm. Aints suddenly groaned after remembering a time he'd heard a recording of his own voice, but his psyche was immediately stabilized. Is that so? I like your normal one better. Thanks, Nabe. Still, I didn't even think I would be able to equip this thing. Aints poked his neck again, wondering if Narbarul meant what she said, or whether she was only flattering him. He felt the creature attached to his throat, a lip bug move. If he were human, it probably would have tickled. Did he just not know, or did it get changed in a patch? These kinds of gaps in knowledge could prove dangerous. What a pain that he had to verify his information about this world and what he learned in Yggdrasil. The creators of Yggdrasil wanted their players to enjoy the unknown. Hoping to give people motivation to experiment, the developers revealed a vast amount of data alongside a system worth tinkering with. Thus, a true unknown spread out before the players. There was hardly any useful info available about the map, nor were there details about the various dungeons, how to mine ores, what was edible, or what types of magic beasts could be kept. Everything was left completely unexplained. In the world of Yggdrasil, players had to discover all this information themselves. To put it plainly, they even had to use trial and error to figure out what they could and could not equip. Sure, there were walk-through sites and information pages, but most were nothing more than collections of widely known facts or contained tips of dubious veracity. Yggdrasil was a game of exploring the unexplored, and any intelligence acquired was a treasure. There was no benefit to making it freely available to strangers. The only intelligence that could be trusted came from the guild that a player belonged to or traded for with a dependable guild. The rest was generally considered worthless. There was even a period when completely suspicious posts appeared, stating things like, "I left my guild, so I am revealing all the info we were hoarding." Well, there was some true stuff buried among the lies, but there was one guild called the Flaming Third Eye. It was formed by someone who ran a members-only paid Yggdrasil wiki. They committed the atrocious deed of sending spies to infiltrate elite guilds and steal intelligence. Only the admins didn't consider it reprehensible. They tacitly approved it as a valid way to acquire information, but that didn't fly with those who had been robbed. When public fury reached its peak, the elite guilds formed an alliance and attacked the Flaming Third Eye. Players camped the spying guild's respawn points, their guild base, and the shrine in town. They killed them over and over each time their victims came back to life. In the end, the Flaming Third Eye was destroyed. Their members scattered to the four winds. Aints fondly recalled how they opened up their wiki for free after that. Well, there weren't any spies in Aints Ulgaun, but if it weren't for that whole mess, we might have had more members. The incident triggered a freeze on welcoming new members into the guild. They ended up topping out at 41, the smallest membership out of the top guilds. In Yggdrasil's later days, it was possible that there had been sites publishing only reliable information. Aints mostly pored over those back in the good old days when the guild Aints Ulgaun was at its peak. There hadn't been much useful info at the time. My knowledge basically cuts off back then. I at least kept an eye on patch notes. There must be other Yggdrasil players in this world besides me, though. I have to keep in mind that I might be at a disadvantage when it comes to intelligence. By gaining control of the Eight Fingers, their knowledge of the area surrounding Nazarick had jumped. Aints had learned a lot about the kingdom as well as the empire, and now they were putting that knowledge to good use. But there hadn't been much known about the sacred kingdom called the Theocracy or the Council State, so they needed to cautiously gather intelligence on those. Sheesh. Thinking about it only brings up more anxiety. I am ready to talk about something more cheerful. Aints paused and took a quick look around. The empire sure is lively. Oh, it seems just like Erantle to me. At Narbaral's response, he looked around again. The streets are animated, and the people walking about have a gleam in their eyes. It's a sign that they feel their lives will improve over time. Narbaral, walking a fair bit behind him, was saying something along the lines of "Brilliant observation, Mr. Momon," but Aints didn't reply. He was too busy feeling embarrassed about what he had said aloud. It was simply a feeling he got, but he didn't trust his eyes. He wasn't trying to be like Pandora's actor. Was it a sign? How could he say something so pretentious and not be mortified? Did he think he was a poet? He had to act like a hero to some extent back in the kingdom, but it seemed like he was still performing even now. Shame bloomed on his face beneath his helmet, though his bare skull couldn't actually blush, of course. Aints caught sight of the inn Fluda had recommended up ahead. Even at a distance, it was clear that the best accommodations in the imperial capital were superior to those in Erantle. Still, that was only a practical impression of the facilities. If Erantle's best lodgings were a luxurious inn with a sense of history, then this building was more like a posh, newly opened hotel. Deciding which one was better came down to a matter of taste. Well, we can be sure until we go in, but the atmosphere is pretty unmistakable. Aints gave a quick once-over to the proof that he was an adamantite rank adventurer hanging around his neck before stepping toward the entrance. Like in Erantle, there were muscular guards in leather armor stationed by the door. The men glanced suspiciously at Aints and Narbaral as they came through the arch. Their eyes popped open after resting on a certain point. Are those real? It seems so, what with the impressive gear and all, but Aints heard one of the men conferring with the other in a low voice. When he approached the guards standing at attention, who were unable to conceal their nervousness, one of them asked politely in an extremely strained voice, "Excuse me, Sir Adamantite rank adventurer, I am sorry to trouble you, but might I examine your plate? Aints took his plate off for inspection. Does this in refuse first-timers? Yes. It is true that to maintain a certain dignity, we turn people away unless they have a suitable introduction. Adamantite rank adventurers are an exception. After wiping his hands on his clothes, the guard bowed and gingerly received the plate with his hands. Then he turned it over and read the words on the back. Sir Momon of Raven Black, that's right. Then you are all set. Thank you for presenting your adamantite plate. The guard was still very gingerly handling the plate as he returned it. Plates indicating adventurer ranks were made of the same metal as the rank name. Even this tiny name tag was worth an immeasurable fortune. It was extremely hard, so it wouldn't become scratched if it fell. But the compensation for losing it would be anything but small. There was no lack of stories where a crow-like bird called a culambarat would snatch a gold plate from someone's hands just as they were about to return it. These were parables urging people to handle plates with care. They were accounts of something that had really happened. When Aints took the plate back, the two guards' shoulders visibly relaxed in relief. I'll be going in now. Yes, sir. I'll escort you to the front desk. Oh, thank you. The Kingdom doesn't have a tipping system, so the Empire probably doesn't either. Aints wondered absent-mindedly. One of the two guards led him inside. They passed through the lobby, which had a floor that seemed to be made of marble. Then they headed for reception. This is Adamantite rank, Adventurer Sir Momon, and his companion. After the elegant man behind the counter signaled with his eyes, the guard bowed respectfully to Aints and returned to his post. Welcome, Sir Momon. We appreciate you choosing us for your stay in the Imperial capital. The receptionist bowed deeply. No, don't worry about it. I'll do one night for starters. Very well. Then would you sign the register, please? Aints wrote the signature he'd practiced dozens of times in the language of the kingdom. Thank you. And what kind of room would you like? Personally, Aints was fine with an inexpensive room. But as expected, that wouldn't do. He can eat, so he'd be fine without food. But Aints recalled various meals of this world: thick, green, sweet-smelling fruit water, something like pink scrambled eggs, sliced meat covered in a blue liquid. They all piqued his curiosity, but he couldn't eat any of them. No desire for sex, food, or sleep. There are a lot of handy things about this body, but he's lost a lot too. It's too bad. Of course, if I had kept my flesh, there's a good chance I'd be overindulging. Suddenly imagining himself in bed with Albedo, his face twisted slightly. Something that went further than a manager sexually harassing a female subordinate woman popped into his head. Albedo seems to love me, but it's complicated. If only I hadn't sorry. Anything suitable is fine, by the way. Is it all right if I pay in Kingdom gold instead of trade currency? Not a problem. In the first place, the exchange rate between Kingdom and Imperial currency is 1-to-1. I see. Then I'll leave it up to you. Understood. We'll prepare a suitable room, Sir Momon. Would you mind waiting in the lounge? Aints' attention turned toward the 50-seat bar. It was overflowing with class. There was ample room between each comfortable-looking chair, and a bard was softly playing a tune. All food and drink in the lounge is on the house, so please make yourself at home. It would seem that no matter the world, services rendered were always commensurate with the amount a customer paid, not that there was anything for Aints to be particularly happy about in this case. Got it. Okay, Nabe, let us go. Aints took her to the bar, and they sat in the nearest open seats. Several other guests were in the lounge. Most seemed to be adventurers. A high-ranking adventurer made an extraordinary amount for completing a single job. The standard of living improved as a matter of course. Staying at a place like this became second nature. It was probably like that in every city. Rantel had been the same. Aints made sure the plate indicating his rank was clearly visible. If they became a topic of conversation, their reputation as adventurers would rise, and there was nothing wrong with that. Conscious of the attention gathering on them, Aints picked up the menu that had been left in front of them. He couldn't read it. He flipped through it haphazardly. He opened it despite knowing he wouldn't be able to read it to avoid looking suspicious. He did have the reading item he lent to Sebas before, but he couldn't casually use it here. Sebas Tsuya, whom as he recalled his subordinate's face, the name of the woman Sebas was involved with, slipped out. What about her? Oh, it's nothing. I just wonder if she's getting along all right. He left her care in Seba's hands, but since Aints had vowed to protect her, it was his role as manager to keep tabs on his employee. I don't think there are any issues. The head maid is in disciplinary confinement, so Sir Sebas is with her at all times, teaching her the various duties. Once she learns enough etiquette, her lessons will expand to include cooking and other tasks. Then after determining her aptitude, she'll get her official assignment. I see. Well, as long as she has Sebas, she'll be fine, right? And isn't it about time those two were released? Albedo's anger has subsided somewhat by now, hasn't it? Nabril said nothing and lowered her head slightly. Perhaps noticing a pause in their conversation, a waiter approached. Have you made your selections? I'll have an ice makiasha. What about you, Nabe? The same. You can order whatever you like, you know. Yes, but I'll have the same, please. Oh, but please make mine with extra milk. Understood. The waiter bowed deeply and quietly withdrew. A makiasha was a drink that was the same color as a calf latte, which Aints had often seen at inns in E. Rantel.